Hey everybody, welcome to the October sampler block of the month. So this time the block is kind of all about partial piecing, so I'm going to show you how to do that. But first we have to do some, get some things ready. So I'm going to sew 3 strips together. They're going to be kind of like this when they're sewn together. So let me go ahead and do that first. And what you're going to do is you're going to make 4 of these. So I'm going to press them in between. Pressing is really important, that your pressing keeps your seam straight instead of wobbly. And I like to press it flat first and then press it to a side, and try not to distort it as you're pressing it. Try to keep it nice and straight. So don't pull on it, don't tug on it. You want to keep it really straight. Okay, so I'm going to add my last piece of this 3-piece strip, and I want to make sure my ends meet. I don't want one of them to be longer than the other. So when you're sewing, make sure they meet. And you can do that by pinning or just holding them and making sure that your ends meet. Again, I'm going to press, making sure it stays really nice and straight. Okay. So that's what I just made. And now I'm going to make some half square triangles, and I've already marked my line. I've sewn on either side. You can see it a little bit better here. So I'm just going to cut it apart, press it, and then I'll be ready to go. I'm going to press these to the darker fabric. Don't want all this steam. Let me turn that down. And I'm going to trim off these little bits at the end because I don't like them. They just add a lot of bulk. Okay, so now with these half square triangles, I'm going to make a little friendship star. So let me put it up here. Put the plain squares around it. In the middle. So I'm going to sew these together in rows, and then I'm going to be careful about pressing. So I'm going to sew these 2 together. I'm going to set them here, so I can do 3 at a time. All right, so I'm just going to sew these gonna put them back on the wall so I know what goes where. Okay, so I'm just gonna add the third piece on, and I'm just gonna lay them out. And whenever I set down fabric, like lots of things I want to sew, I always put it so that the seam side that's going into the machine is what I'm gonna sew, if that makes sense. These apart, and with this particular block, the friendship star, I'm always going to press it towards the plain square. Here's the middle. Crooked, but you get the idea. Alright, so with any of our blocks, whenever there's seams meeting, I'm going to pin it where they meet. I'm going to pin it here and here. So I can press this, and I'm going to press it this way because I have less seams I'm going against. I have two plain squares if I press it in this direction. Just press a little bit flatter. So that's what I have, and I'm going to sew this on, matching these seams. And we'll have our little friendship star. I'll get that out later. Okay, so the friendship star. And now I'm going to put the strips of fabric around it. And I'm going to follow the directions in the pattern, how it's set up. And I'm going to separate it a little bit so you can kind of see what's going on. Okay, so the first seam we're going to sew is going to be this bottom one. So I'm going to line it up, move that back a little bit more. So I want to line it up so that this meets, and I'm going to sew here, and I'm going to stop sewing about right there. So I'm going to sew here and stop right there, okay? So I'm lining up the square corner and just sewing part way. So it's called a partial seam. Just gonna go part way down. Okay, so I sewed from here to about there, right? So you can see that it's not completely sewn. All right, so I'm just going to encourage my seam to go towards those stripes, and I always put this back the way I started it. So now I'm going to line it up. Okay, so this is the partial seam. I'm not worried about that right now, but now I'm going to sew it from here to here, and this is going to be a full seam. So from end to end, I want to sew this. Make sure my ends meet. Pretend that didn't happen. All right, so now I line this up, and I'm going to sew from here all the way to there. Again, I'm going to put it back the way I started. Okay, again, this is my partial seam. I'm going to ignore that. It's going to go over here. I'm going to sew it from here all the way to here. what I have. And all I have to do now is to finish this seam to go from here to the end. So I'm going to pick it up. And I'm going to start sewing like a 1/2 inch or so before I overlap it about a 1/2 inch. And then I'm going to sew all the way to the end. I suppose you could back tack too, but I just overlap it by 1/2 inch. Okay, so I've finished all of my seams. You can't tell where I had that partial seam. And when I press it, I'm going to press it so that the stripes are, I'm going to press it towards those stripes. So just do that real quick. Great. So there you go, partial seams. Thanks.